Hello. Welcome to episode 8 of the Bronco Well, our last episode. My name is Molly Valdier. I'm an occupational therapy capstone student from Western Michigan University. I decided upon this capstone project of creating this podcast for caregivers and about caregivers because I truly believe that caregivers are the fundamental piece in a child's life. They're the cornerstone of pediatric occupational therapy, and y'all need more support, more resources. So that's why I'm here. I'm completing this capstone under the guidance of Dr. Michelle Suarez, Associate Professor of Occupational Therapy and the Resiliency Center Director at Unified Clinics located on Western Michigan University's Kalamazoo campus. Welcome back, everybody. We'll start off by recapping the content from our last 2 episodes, and then I'll give you a brief oversight into today's topics. It's going to be a little bit more information heavy today, just to give you a heads up. Without further ado, let's get into it. Our previous 2 episodes, episodes 6 and 7, discussed all the different dimensions of wellness. We talked about emotional, physical, social, mental, spiritual, and environmental dimensions of wellness and how these areas can make up your bucket. And by that, I mean just your overall wellness. We discuss some strategies that can be integrated into your life or your routine to start making some changes to supporting a more well-rounded you. So make sure you give that a listen if you haven't already. Today is our final episode. It is absolutely wild for me to think that my capstone semester is coming to a close. Thank you all so much for lending your ears and opening your hearts. It's my most sincere hope that you've been able to take something helpful away from this series that will truly help you to refill your bucket so you can pour into others. Our main discussion topic for today will specifically be about respite care in the state of Michigan. So if you're an out-of-state listener, this may not pertain to you as much, although I'm hoping that you'll be able to take some information about what the respite process looks like. We'll walk through insurance and all of the criteria that needs to be met in order to obtain respite services that are covered by insurance. Next, we'll talk about resources that are available in Southwest Michigan. So think anywhere from the Kalamazoo to the Grand Rapids area. We'll talk about those resources that might be available to families if you can't qualify for respite care, but also want your child to be presented with opportunities to learn new skills, interact with peers, etc., and also give you a little bit of a break too. These resources will include summer programs and scholarships and things of that nature. As always, this podcast is your well, so dip your bucket in and take what you want and dump out the rest. All right, let's get into respite care in Michigan. First, let's define respite. Respite is a service that provides a temporary break between the family caregiver and the care recipient, according to the National Respite Network. I'll be including a lot of their resources within the show notes, but my goal here is to hopefully help synthesize some of the information for you and make it a little bit more digestible. So according to Community Mental Health Services of Michigan, respite also includes this definition. Respite providers shall be used on a short-term basis for relief of the unpaid primary caregiver. Respite care can be provided in the consumer's residence, a friend or relative's home, in the community, in a licensed foster home, or in a licensed group home. Respite cannot be used for daycare while the primary caregiver works. Respite funds are to pay the family friend or the respite care provider for respite services provided and must also pay for staff trainings that are required by Medicaid. Let's talk eligibility. Children that automatically qualify for respite care are children within the foster care system or are wards under the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I'll be referring to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as MDHHS from here on out. These children are automatically eligible for respite care per the MDHHS website. This can include specifically at licensed foster homes, a relative caregiver, an unrelated caregiver, adoptive placements, and or legal parents or guardians. But the child must be under MDHHS supervision. So those are the children that automatically qualify. If you have a foster child or a child that is under the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services supervision, they will automatically qualify for respite care. Additionally, your child can qualify for respite care through community mental health. Your local community mental health services program, or the CMHSP, can determine whether your family is eligible for community mental health services, including respite. Eligibility for services is determined based on several factors, including the nature and the severity of your child's disability. So if you are a resident in Kalamazoo, Van Buren, or Ottawa County, all three of these counties' community mental health is named after the county itself. So for example, the community mental health service in Kalamazoo is just called Kalamazoo Community Mental Health. Van Buren Community Mental Health, Ottawa Community Mental Health. If you are a resident in Allegan County, your community mental health services are called On Point. That's one word and it's all capitals. If you live in Kent County, your community mental health services are called Network 180. If you live in Calhoun County, your community mental health services are called Summit Point. If you are a resident of Ionia County, The Right Door is the name of your community mental health services. All right, so now that you are aware of what your specific local community mental health services are, let's talk non-Medicaid eligibility. If your family is found to be eligible for respite, the cost of respite services will be decided based on your family's ability to pay, as determined by the Community Mental Health Services Program guidelines. The amount of respite that your family receives will vary depending on your family's needs. Respite may be the only support need identified by your family. You are not required to receive treatment from community mental health services in order to receive respite care, though. That's a distinction that I want to make sure I emphasize. You don't need to receive treatment from community mental health in order to receive respite if you are a non-Medicaid family. On the flip side, let's talk Medicaid eligibility. If your child is Medicaid enrolled and your family is eligible for community mental health services, your family might be eligible for respite. Respite care services must meet the medical necessity criteria that is outlined by Medicaid. The concept of medical necessity does not mean that your child must be physically ill in order for you to receive respite services. So medical necessity per the Medicaid bulletin is on their site. So I'll have that linked in the show notes, but I did some digging for you. So this will detail what are most likely the most relevant criterion that needs to be met. So your child needs to meet this medical necessity criteria in order to be eligible for respite services. The services must be intended to treat, diminish, or stabilize the symptoms of mental illness, developmental disability, or substance use disorder, and/or expected to arrest or delay the progression of a mental illness, developmental disability, or substance use disorder, and/or designed to assist the beneficiary to attain or maintain a sufficient level of functioning in order to achieve his or her goals of community inclusion and participation, independence, recovery, or productivity. That's a lot of jargon, but that is the medical necessity requirements in order to obtain community mental health respite services through the state. I wish I could break that down a little bit more digestibly for you, but really ultimately a conversation between you and your community mental health provider needs to happen in order for you to determine your child's eligibility for respite services if they are enrolled in Medicaid. This conversation looks like what's called a person-centered family, or PCP, or family-centered practice conversation with a provider from community mental health. This will help your family determine if you meet the aforementioned criteria, and then you'll be connected with a representative through community mental health to be able to obtain respite services and any other services you might qualify for. Now, here's something I'd like to make note of. In order to obtain these services covered by insurance, your child will likely have to have a diagnosis of some sort if they are not automatically eligible by being within the foster care system or a ward of the state. There's not any one diagnosis that would qualify your child or your family for respite care, but it would be a significantly more difficult case to make for a covered respite care situation without a diagnosis, unfortunately. I know that might sound incredibly frustrating for some of you caregivers out there, and believe me, that frustration is valid. Unfortunately, the way things are set up in this state, it's just so much easier to advocate for respite services when a clear diagnosis is shown. That doesn't mean that this is the only way. It just means that the chances of obtaining respite services without the need for excessive or increased advocacy might be higher. Let's talk about the types of respite care. This is all the information provided from the state. So remember, automatically eligible children are either in the foster care system or are wards of the state. So that is mainly going to be the perspective provided here. Let's talk first about the different types of providers. You can have unlicensed providers provide respite care. So you, as the child's current caregiver, can select an unlicensed person to provide respite, similar to the way substitute caregivers are utilized. This person must pass background checks for the following before providing care: the Children's Protective Services history, the Internet Criminal History Access Tool, the Public Sex Offender Registry, and then the respite care must be approved by the child's case manager. Alternatively, you can choose to select a licensed provider for respite. So you, as the child's caregiver, can select another licensed foster parent. A verification of the active license in good standing is required. And of course, as I said with the previous point, respite must be approved by the child's case manager. And again, this is just for those children that are wards of the state or are within the foster system. There are, of course, other ways and other manners to obtain respite care, as we just discussed, but I just want to remind you that this is where the information is coming from. This is the main perspective they take. Another type of provider would be a contracted respite provider. So respite is requested through the child's case manager and arranged through the respite home's licensing agency. Families are then recruited and licensed specifically to provide respite care. Contracted providers are supervised by private agencies. All three of these respite providers, so that means the unlicensed, the licensed, and the contracted providers, are eligible for reimbursement via a specific rate separate from any foster care rate per Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Michigan's contracted respite care provider for Southwest Michigan is called Heart for Home, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes. Remember, these are just specific examples of the types of provider that you can get. If you are not a foster or adoptive parent, this does not mean that you cannot obtain respite services. This is just saying the requirements that need to be satisfied by children who are automatically enrolled in the system in order to obtain the specific type of respite providers. Of course, if your child does not have a case manager or caseworker, you as the child's caregiver would have the final say over the approval of a specific respite provider. Let's take a quick break for a second. How are you doing so far? Getting lost in the weeds? I know there's a lot of content that we just went over, so I'm going to briefly recap some of it. And if you'd like, you can take this time to go back and listen to anything that we just discussed. In order for your child to automatically be enrolled and eligible for respite care, they are either in the foster system or are wards of the state. Otherwise, you can go through your community mental health program and have a conversation with a representative there about whether or not your child can qualify for respite care through either a non-Medicaid route or a Medicaid route. There are different types of providers. There's unlicensed, licensed, and contracted providers, but all three of these are available for reimbursement from Medicaid. Michigan-specific contracted respite care provider for Southwest Michigan is Heart for Home. Okay, now that we've just kind of summarized all of that information, I'll give you some time to kind of think through it, debrief, check in with yourself. All right, welcome back. So we talked about the different types of respite providers, the different types meaning the unlicensed providers, the licensed providers, and the contracted providers. But now let's get into who those providers can actually be, who can provide respite care. Possibilities include family friend respite. That's provided by an individual chosen by your family. Respite can take place in your home, at the home of the respite provider, or within the community. There's also one-to-one respite. That's provided by an individual trained by the respite program that you select and takes place in your home or within the community. Additionally, day camps and overnight camps can offer respite opportunities for parents while providing a fun or educational experience for children. These opportunities and experiences can then be reimbursed using respite funds per the state guidelines. Additionally, there's respite home respite. That's provided by individuals trained by the respite program within a licensed home or facility in the community. Lastly, there's group settings. Those programs include trained staff, and they provide care to a group of several children within a licensed facility, such as a church or school or community center. So you can do a group respite and bring your child there so they can also see and be with other children around their age under a licensed facility and trained staff. If you elect to go with the first option, which is that family friend respite, there is a program called the Family Support Respite Program, and it's a Medicaid cover service available to those who meet the criteria for the Community Mental Health Services Program. This program, if you meet the criteria, will provide you with a funding for a trusted loved one or family member who is 18 years or older and not you or your spouse to become your respite provider. So if you have a niece or a nephew that's 18 years or older, or you've just got another loved one, maybe it's a neighbor, you can have them go through this program and Medicaid will cover the training and the costs for them to become a respite provider. There are the trainings that your intended provider will have to complete, as well as some other qualifications that are listed on that specific site, but also some of the background checks and protective services qualifications that must be passed in order to become that respite provider. But this is just a great option for those who are weary of someone they don't know providing care to their children. That was a lot of talk about respite care. Of course, this is not all encompassing, as much as I really, really wish that I could cater this to each individual family and your unique circumstances with how your child is in your home. I wish I could provide that information for you, but this is just kind of a general overview. And really, at the end of the day, if you are interested in respite services and your child is either a Medicaid child or not, it is possible for you to obtain respite care services. You just have to follow up with your community mental health program. Let's pivot to some other resources within Southwest Michigan. So these, like I said previously, are largely camps or other sorts of recreational opportunities where your child can go. Now, some of these might be eligible for respite reimbursement. Again, that's a conversation you would have to have with somebody in your community mental health program. But these opportunities are just another more informal way for you to have a little bit of a break as a caregiver and potentially take some time for yourself while knowing that your children are in good hands. So let's first start with Camp Kidwell. This is located in Bloomingdale, Michigan. It is structured for typically developing children and neurotypical children. However, they do have other sorts of supports that they can provide detailed on their site. Their camps include day sessions and overnight. And if finances are a concern for you, there are payment plans, scholarships, and discount. You can request up to 75% assistance, but scholarships cannot be used with discounts. This looks like an amazing traditional summer camp full of opportunities to spend time out of doors and be with kids and peers their own age, and to take full advantage of all that West Michigan has to offer within the summer. Another camp that might be an option for you or your family is the Icus Indian Trails Camp. This is a camp specifically for children and adults with disabilities located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have a REC program, a REC program, which stands for Recreation, Experience, and Community, in partnership with the Ottawa County Community Mental Health Services for year-round experiences. Additionally, there's a 9-week summer camp for kids aged 7 and up and adults aged 18 and up that is inclusive and barrier-free. They also have a day respite program from May to September on certain Saturdays throughout the year. That's for 7 years and older, and the sessions are 7 hours. Camp Sunshine is another wonderful option and caters towards those individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. This is located in West Olive, Michigan. Children will be one-to-one with a volunteer counselor during their overnight camp. This also includes payment plans, the use of respite funds, and scholarships. If your child also has an IEP through their school, this may automatically qualify them for a scholarship. Campers tend to be on the older side, so if you have a child that's aged 16 to 18, this would be a great opportunity for them. Camp Sunshine, again, looks very similar to a typical summer camp. Lots of fun out of doors, being in beautiful natural spaces, and just taking advantage of all that West Michigan has to offer. Again, all of these camps will be linked within the show notes. Last but not least, the YMCA camps in both Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids offer lots of opportunities for kids to experience fun recreation, either pertaining to sports or typical summer camps. YMCA camps have both adaptive and neurotypical and typically developing options. Within Kalamazoo specifically, there is a pre-K camp ages 2 to 5, Explorers camp aged 6 to 9, On the Road camp ages 10 to 13, and there's also half-day sports camp for ages 5 to 10. Some adaptive sports include tennis, geared specifically towards children with autism, adaptive swimming, adaptive seasonal sports, and adaptive biking. Financial assistance applications are right there detailed on their site. At the Grand Rapids YMCA location, they have lots of amazing options for, again, traditional summer camps. All of the financial aid information is right there on their site. In addition to the amazing day camp options, they also have lots of sports options to get some of that big-bodied movements in for your children. These camps are all ages. There's 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 12, 13 to 17, and 17 and up for the sports programs. Sports include tennis, taekwondo, parent and child swimming lessons, racquetball, pickleball, and so many more. Those are just some of the wonderful resources out in the community that are available to you and your children if respite care isn't feasible for you or possible for you. And hopefully these will just provide you with some time for yourself, whether that's just a half hour to chill out in your car and do nothing but listen to this podcast or just white noise, or to have a whole week just for you and the rest of your family. Taking care of yourself is so important, and I am so grateful to all of you for tuning in to this podcast series in efforts to refill your bucket so then you can pour into others. It has been such an amazing and incredible journey to develop this capstone with all of you wonderful caregivers in mind, and I'm just so grateful to the caregivers that I was able to speak with that helped me to develop the specific topics for this podcast in the hopes that this would benefit wider audiences. Throughout the course of this podcast series, you have learned so much about your own body, about stress responses, dimensions of wellness, and the research behind all of this, as well as different theories and strategies to help regulate yourself before regulating your children, alongside all of the content we just discussed about respite and other resources. I hope that this podcast series has been able to provide you with something that you can use in your day-to-day life. Thank you so much for dipping into the Bronco well to refill your bucket. I'm so humbled and appreciative of all of you caregivers, and I look forward to continuing to work with pediatric caregivers in the future. As we wrap up our entire series, let's take one last journey together as we complete our positive affirmations. So go ahead and get in that mental headspace, do whatever you need to do in order to really sit on and reflect on these positive affirmations. I cannot control the future, but I can meet its challenges. I am the best parent for my children, and they are a gift to me. I have been trusted with the care of this specific child for a reason. I am allowed to set boundaries to protect my time and energy. Calm is coming. There is no such thing as normal. My child is learning, and so am I. I anticipate and welcome the unexpected. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. I cannot pour from an empty cup. I am filling my bucket day by day. Thank you all so much again for tuning into the Bronco Well, refilling your bucket so you can pour into others. It has been such an amazing journey, and I hope you're able to take away something that will help your quality of life improve and that of your family. You've done the hard work. Now go be empowered and be the best caregivers that I know you all are. Thanks again for listening.